Unless you're going to give a lot of HJs.
That's investing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you got to be ambitious, and I think there's got to be a lot of training to get up to that level, though.
It's just being an entrepreneur.
But yeah, it's
No, maybe now I know why I didn't go on Dragon's Den.
my business is giving HJs. How many are you going to give a day? 10,000 at £1 each.
Set up a franchise. Wherever you see,
I missed that episode.
wherever you see the golden arches, you know there's a HJ just around the corner, baby. There'll be someone there. They didn't even reply to my email.
Dr. Evil 10% laughing with his head off for those that are just listening.
Can't speak. Like, it's the most retarded things I've ever heard.
We are back. That's right. Back-to-back weeks. So finally things have been restored. Bullish Bitcoin banter and bullshit brought to you by the 4Bs. Starting off with Mr. All-In, aka the $1 trillion man, Dr. Evil 10%, aka the People's Champ, myself, Sir Neverlook, aka the Excellence of Execution, and surprise, surprise, no surprise, Mrs. No Show, aka No Show Pod 138. What's going on, guys?
Well, I was hoping that if we poked Miss No Show, she might show, but she did not show. No, and no acknowledgement. So hopefully Miss No Show does show, and then we can have her on the show.
I question the value that Mrs. No Show will bring to the show these days. I mean, 135 pods she's been missing out of the 138, so she's only done 3 pods, right?
Yeah, funnily enough, I listened to our previous pod in the gym today, and it mentioned about the person who Mr. All-In worked with for some consultancy and turned into Bitcoin. He said, "Oh yeah, we discussed this 2 years in the pod," and I was just like, "My God, I keep on forgetting we've been doing this for so long. Like the last few years, like obviously we've probably missed 20 in total, so it really is 3 years worth of pods we've been doing. It has flown by. It's so much I really look forward to on the Tuesdays when we do.
Highlight of my week, absolutely, for sure.
So, I do miss Shitcoin Corner, but Mr. All-In brings toys up the pram.
Oh, too much. I much prefer it now. Occasionally it will come up, but it's rare, isn't it?
Yeah.
Every pod was too much.
Oh, some of it was hilarious, though.
Yeah, it's fun dunking on it, but waste of time. Let's just dunk on fiat.
I think having a look at what the new things are coming in, like I can't bear to do anything like ordinals or runes or whatever those are, but because they're kind of like on the Bitcoin network. But what's the next craze going to be? I think that'll be worth covering. God knows what it's going to be, because they just seem to be regurgitating shit at the moment.
Who cares? We'll just cover it when it blows up, like briefly. Like there's the way the dumb money went this time. So, even on a Bitcoin standard, right? There will still be dumb money. They will technically be Bitcoiners because they'll be spending Bitcoin, and they'll give it to some scammer on some which quick scheme. It's scamming is as old as time, and it will continue to happen, especially where there is money. And the more money that is sloshing around, the more scammers will appear. So clearly, Bitcoin is a rich place to scam. You've got a lot of people that have money to spend, but may not be quite educated enough yet. And they can be deviated off like, oh, you're here to buy Bitcoin. Well, come into my office. I have a better Bitcoin in here. And they go, oh, really? A better Bitcoin? And off they go. Slams to the slaughter. But
here's one actually, which we haven't got in the show notes, but I thought was worth mentioning is I've seen a lot of stuff on Twitter about the Japanese yen. What the fuck is happening? it's gone down by like 20-30%. It seems to be bottoming out. Like it's not going fast like Argentina, but if you look at, say, a 5-year view, it's gone, say, versus the British pound, and it's not like the British pound is that stable, because we have had massive dips against the American dollar. But if you have a look from 5-year view, 142, we're now at 197 yen to the pound. So, you know, something's not right there, is it? I think it just is one of the many domino. And I think, as we talked about earlier, it's where everything eventually, it does fold in to the dollar eventually, doesn't it? And then into Bitcoin.
Yeah.
If you just look at the year view, it's still, you know, it's still 10-15%. It's noticeable that they're really losing their purchasing power.
Pretty much from the inevitable of 2020 and COVID, March 2020, just continued to have gone down. Yeah,
it's just a race to the bottom, isn't it, for fiat? They're for the same reasons. It's inflation and it's getting out of control.
Well, you keep on reading that, like, one of the key indicators is when your tax revenue doesn't isn't significantly bigger than your interest payments on your debt, then you know it's fucked, don't you? You really know it's gone.
Well, especially when your debt or even the interest on your debt every year is greater than the GDP of the country. Might be a bit of a warning signal as well.
Yeah, because I think US is about 200%, isn't it?
What, in debt above its GDP? No, yeah. The interest payments. What, 2x on its GDP?
No, its debt is on its GDP. I think it's 2x.
Right, it's doubling in debt.
Yeah, I don't know about its interest, but obviously it's very significant when it's that amount of debt. But I always do question, and this is like probably going down conspiracy theory, is who on earth do they owe that to? Because we always talk about interest. So where's that interest going, considering the Fed is owned by the American government? And it then goes into, well, who actually owns the central banks? It's not the government, isn't it? Is it the family, which no one's talk about?
Yeah, well, it's one of them, isn't it, where I think a lot of it, like America, is the country that they like the best. So usually when there's some country suffering somewhere, you could probably, if you follow the money far enough, it probably is going to underpin the US dollar in some shape or form. So that would be my guess. Because it's like how we saw, isn't it? It's like, was it like France? Oh, wow, look how good it's doing. And you go, oh, hold on, there's French territories and there's a dozen countries that are getting screwed, and you realize all their natural resources are going to underpin France. It's like America have the same thing. And obviously they demand everyone pay in US dollars for just about everything. So, and they can buy in US dollars as well. So they get everything that they buy on a global scale, literally for free. Because they buy it in dollars, they print it out of thin air. Whereas everybody else has to pay dollars that they have to earn those dollars. They can't print them. So,
yeah,
you know, I was literally just chatting to the missus about this today. It's like playing a game of Monopoly, but one person just pays all their debts out of the bank. And they're like, oh, I'm the best player, I've never lost. Yeah, well, yeah, because you can't lose. Like, you're just taking money out of the bank. Like, we've all got set amounts of cash, and the only cash we have to earn, and then we pay our debts out of it, and eventually we lose. You never pay your debts. You just take it out of the bank. You go, sounds like you're salty. Sounds like you're salty against the greatest Monopoly player in the world, like USA. Like, no, it's like you're just playing as the bank. It's cheating.
So you're making it worthless. And like I said, it's so insane when you look into the history of money, but this has happened before. And yet the US decided it was going to do it because basically it spent the world's gold, then told everyone that they couldn't have their gold back, and therefore went on to a dollar standard for the world and managed to pin it to petrol so things weren't so bad. And it's just, it's just beggars belief. You would have thought like the country would be like, no, we want our fucking gold, and then just all team that together and actually bomb the US. That would have been a normal world where they actually just went fuck you. But instead, we end up with this really weird fiat currency, which, you know, every time which it's happened, it's been 50 years or so, it's collapsed the country.
Yeah, well, that's why when you look at that stuff, you go, yeah, a justifiable reaction would have been to bomb them all. But then once you go into conspiracy land and you realize there's a couple of families that run pretty much all the governments, you suddenly realize, oh, right, maybe they weren't actually sad that that money all left these countries, because maybe the people that were running those countries directly benefited. So the countries lost, but the people that ran the countries gained. And you go, oh, right. Yeah, now it makes sense. Now it makes sense why they put all the money in one place, because, yeah, the people of the countries lost out, but they are now infinitely rich and maintain their power.
Are we going to do that episode where we talk about the unmentionable family and not mention the family by name for a single time throughout the whole pod?
Oh, no, what? Why can't we mention the Rothschilds?
How dare you accuse them? It's not them I'm talking about.
Allegedly. Well, yeah. I'm just reading the news back onto Japan. It seems like they've got two choices: whether the authorities step in and buy up the yen themselves,
so they buy their own debts and print more money to slow down inflation.
No, they don't print money. They print bonds, and then they print money.
Money. It's just it's adding an extra step. But it's there's this like cartoon. I probably sent it to the group where it's Jerome Powell. It's like, I know how to deal with this inflation. It's all on fine. He throws a bucket of cash on it, and it's just like it's literally that. Like, it's gonna happen more and more.
Correct.
And when a country is like 10-15% in a year, like, not just inflation, but against another heavily inflated currency, you know that things are really going to shit. And this is just the start.
What was option 2?
Raising interest rates.
Yeah, so just fuck everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's this classic fucking fiat economist, isn't it? There's nothing in there that says maybe we should actually rein back government spending, stop inflation, maybe actually build something that people fucking want to buy, you know, invest in public services, invest in business, you know, maybe incentivize entrepreneurs,
deregulate sectors, gives tax breaks, lower tax, make people want to work, make businesses want to come. No, we're just going to rank up taxes because that'll make us money. Put an exit tax there, which we're seeing, which we talk about later, and yeah, hopefully it'll work out for the best. But instead,
it's hilarious.
You end up with
It's hilarious that option number 1 for government to stop inflation is to like buy its own money. You go, what are you even like? Listen to yourself.
But we're doing that right now.
The problem is it actually works, right? Because it's all just a freaking made-up Ponzi scheme, and it's just, oh my god.
Well, if you do it at the right rate, like say if you inflate the currency by say 20-30%, you get it's starting to run away. To help pay that off, you end up doing it like at 15%. So you try and taper it back down over time. I think that's their approach at the moment, because we are printing, and they're just trying to kick it down, but they're trying to slow down like the crash by inflating, by giving more currency. So they're not doing as much as they were in 2020-21. But really good example of this for anyone listening is Argentina. So Milei, who we're all a bit suspicious of, has come in and he's cut government spending significantly, and I think he's banned any printing of the currency, and they seem to be stabilizing, aren't they? And that's, you know, obviously I've only read secondhand reports because I'm not someone who looks into the financials of Argentina, but it's one to watch.
I think the last time I saw Milei, he was fucking hugging Zelensky, or, you know, the little fake soldier from Ukraine.
Oh, one who likes to play armies.
Yeah, coked up in his little army gear, being like, I'm at war, give me money. Anyway, should we get on to the fucking first?
Yeah, let's get on.
Ages. we've got an important first story here that is actually Bitcoin related, not just. As I say, essentially, that's your Inflation Weekly. I have to delete Inflation Weekly out.
I was going to say as well, you're always the one that tries to keep us on track, and there he was taking us off on a tangent before we'd even started.
Yeah.
No, we've got a further inflation. It's a doubler.
Actually, no. The Inflation Weekly this week is it's a really good one. So I want to discuss. But our top story of the week this week, and it really is a big one, right? And it actually got me a little bit worried. But basically, the founder and CEO of cryptocurrency mixing service arrested and charged with money laundering and unlicensed money transmitting offences. So this is Samurai. So this is obviously we've talked about this right back in the day when you guys didn't even know what mixing was. Samurai
to me.
Yeah, so essentially it's a service that obviously nearly all of us anyway, we buy our coins on a KYC AML website. So basically that means it has your name and address on it. So even when you send those coins from your chosen exchange, you send them to your private wallet, there's obviously a link between those two wallets. So if you ever then want to move or like potentially not pay your taxes or just have some privacy about how much money you have, you can't have it because they know that the coins in this address. So what you can do, you can buy Bitcoin. Ideally, you buy it off an exchange, so you don't need to be KYC. You can buy it peer to peer, and then even if you really want to be doubly sure, you can put it for a mixing service that essentially puts in thousands of inputs, thousands of outputs. It mixes the coins all together, and essentially you get technically clean, kind of KYC Bitcoin at the end. Because even if you go peer to peer, right, it might be someone that has KYC that originally bought that, and someone might be following the loop, and so who knows? So it's a service that mixes these coins and should anonymize them. There's been cases where if the FBI really want to take a look, they will go through thousands of transactions and try and piece it together. But they really have to be looking for you. For the normal kind of tax man, he won't. But this is massive news, right? I've used Samurai. I've literally mixed coins on Samurai, and they've just been shut down. The entire website now this website has been seized with the FBI logo and many other government services logos put on there. It's from the Portugal police. It's from freaking Icelandic police, the IRS, the FBI. It's everybody. There's a massive group effort to shut these
Where
guys
would you rank this in terms of like an exchange? So obviously this is a mixer type company, but is this like on the level of a Coinbase or a Binance or a Gemini or somewhere along those lines? Is this like
is this the biggest one?
Yeah, is this the mixing service of mixers?
Yeah, it was
right.
Yeah, there's only a few. There's Samurai and what's the other one?
Pancake Swap.
Oh fuck no, Jesus! You're talking about fucking some shitcoin exchange.
That's a shitcoin exchange.
I've got it. It's Masari or something. I've forgotten.
Is it like CoinJar or something like that?
No, it's a UK.
No, that's a UK one.
But anyway, it's pretty big.
Okay,
right?
okay.
Because and it's really bad, right? Because these guys essentially, it's the nearest I could compare it to is probably it's like a Silk Road, right? Where at the time, but not nowhere near as impactful, because Silk Road at the time was like the #1 use case for Bitcoin was buy drugs off Silk Road, and then Silk Road got shut down, replaced with exactly the type of messaging on here, and then all the individuals get prosecuted and thrown in prison for the rest of their lives. That was like, almost like the death of Bitcoin, going, what do we do about Bitcoin now, right? And but there's probably a few products that really are built by developers that are designed to enhance the Bitcoin experience, to take us out of the financial world. And there's only 2 or 3 mixing services that really have any volume, because like I've discussed before, you need volume through these mixing services, so there's enough other people to mix your coins with, right? There's no point having a mixing service where there's no one there.
It's like you need a decentralized one, like almost like I don't know if it's the correct way to say it, but like a layer 2. literally where it could be something overlaying, where it just says mix up the whole network, but give everyone the same amount of coins or sats, and then they can't follow it because it's everything, and it's like part of the design.
Yeah, but yeah, it's pretty bad. Like the CEO and the people running this business have been arrested. They're in prison now. Probably unlikely to see.
They're going to be life. It's going to be the same as Ross Albright. They'll pump some stuff through the press, make it stick, but not charge them with it, but have it count towards their sentence, even though it's not relevant. And there's no proof that he ever did it.
Oh, no.
But then Ross Albright will never see daylight, will he?
No. And obviously we know what the money laundering regulation and laws are, for each offence. No, even just like classic AML, over 10K a transaction, if you're not a regulated financial institution, then you have to know the identity of people on both sides. They were literally setting up this, and you had to put a sizable amount of Bitcoin through these types of mixes to make it worthwhile. I think when I did it cost me something like, I think it was about £50 worth of money to start it off, because the problem is you have to do so many transactions to like get it in and out, and then they take a profit in the middle as well. So it's like any kind of money laundering service in reality. They kind of take a few percent, because I got to go make this money work. I'm just not going to I can't just give it you back and like, it's laundered. It's I've got to put it through a mixer, and that costs money.
The question which everyone's asking now is there any way which they can track former customers?
Oh, well, yeah, that's the problem, right? That's why I'm a little bit nervous, because undoubtedly they probably can once they've got the CEO and the founders in a room, and they're threatening them with life sentences. Then who knows what they could do to pull stuff out, and if they've seized all the servers and that type of stuff, then essentially like all the input addresses, I guess, is what they'll be interested in, right? Because all the inputs, there'll be a lot of KYC Bitcoin coming in that has now been cleaned and gone out. But if you have access to all the sends, then you just go, all right, great. These are
hopefully
a list of people
they wiped it.
You'd hope so, but
they would have known it was coming, no doubt either. But
it's come out of nowhere, and it's I think it's a big sign, I think, that like Bitcoin is definitely under attack at this point.
Yeah, it's a classic, when people say, oh, but they'll try and shut Bitcoin down. And obviously we've always said, well, no, you can't. And you could try your best, but it won't happen. So they're attacking the sides by attacking things like this.
Yeah, the centralized services around it,
Especially
when you're setting up a company. And these are the it's the low hanging fruit, isn't it? They're literally, without saying it, they are a money laundering service that technically Bitcoin sits outside of financial institutions and stuff. But if anything, the more Bitcoin gets formalized and accepted as money, then by consequence, now suddenly your little service that just anonymized the coin, gave some privacy that no one cared about before, now Bitcoin's bigger and is more considered money. Boom, now it's as if you were just mixing pounds or dollars, which is highly illegal, right? You can't advertise a money laundering service.
It's funny, we go back once again to the whole thing of they're getting people who make it anonymous when no doubt all these people have paid 50, 60, 70% tax, and they're still trying to get in there. And like I said, we go back to the American Revolution. What did they write about? A 3% import tax on tea. And here we are kind of going, oh yeah, this is really good. They're taking away privacy on transactions for you. Whereas I wonder if we'll ever get transparency on things like Pelosi, Biden, all the things going into their accounts behind the scenes, especially Pelosi, and how exactly all those trades are made. But yeah, instead, this is really good. This is what we need for democracy. It's to take away this privacy, because we should be able to see every $600 Vimo transaction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked Edward Snowden's take. Essentially, the reason why we've got a problem with making money private is the fact that the government have got very used to money not being private. So his tweet is the Department of Justice in quotes, because clearly there's no justice happening here, has once again criminalized the developers of an app that restores financial privacy. The way to fix this is to make money private by default. Privacy must never be exceptional, or they will make it criminal. And I think he nails it there, really. And that's what Bitcoin is trying to do in some shape or form. Obviously, it's not private by design. Bitcoin is quite public by design. The fact you can see all the transactions, see wallets. But the only thing that really put an identity on it, on the wallet, is the fact that we have to put identity into the exchange. If that bit wasn't there, we could just, anyone can just fire up, download a random Bitcoin wallet on your phone and get an address, and then just buy some Bitcoin off, peer to peer, and and that should be just how it happens. And money should be private by default. But clearly, we know what stage of the empire collapsing we're in. So clearly, they're getting more and more authoritarian, getting more and more worried about any leakage that they can see, and they're trying to close all the exit routes. And clearly Bitcoin is a very clear exit route. And not only have they've obviously already managed to KYC and AML the hell out of all the exchanges. It's very difficult to buy Bitcoin these days without giving your full name, date of birth, passport, and driving license. But once you've got it, if you want to, and there's not many people that do this, by the way, which is why it's also quite an interestingly targeted attack, that you could take that money, put it through a mixer, anonymize it, and then leave the country, spend it somewhere else, and that government will have no clue where you got that money from. So there's quite a small group of people that are doing that. Like most people, I think, are largely like me. I've used mixing service in the past, but purely to experiment. I've just been going, what is this? Let's get used to it. Let's put some Bitcoin through it, just to see what's going on there. But by and large, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I live in the UK, and I know full well I don't want to be put into a cage. So even though I know taxation is theft, I allow them to steal it from me because I don't want to go behind bars. So even though I'm very, very accustomed to the Samurai product, I never used it to actually do anything illegal. So I don't think and so if I'm like that, like I'm one of the most extreme Bitcoiners that I know. So I'm like, you've got to be a number of layers more extreme than me to actually use this thing to avoid your government oversight and then move to a different country to then, live potentially under a new identity or something like that, right? You really got to you got to really go all in on this stuff, right? It's once you start mixing your coins and anonymizing it, it's very hard to spend it in the same country. I could mix, let's just say like you got £1 million worth of Bitcoin, right? You go and send it through the mixer, and then now I've got plausible deniability potentially with the tax man when he comes around and goes, oh no, I don't own that £1 million. Da, da, da. But now what? Let's say in the future I want to buy a property, or I want to buy a car, or I want to give it to my kids at some point. The second I do that, they're going to go, where'd that £1 million come from?
Yep.
Oh, I just found it. No, did you pay capital gains on this? And before it all comes back, so you can't spend the money even if it is anonymized. Other than in tiny transactions, like clearly you could go around probably buying cups of coffee, beers, all that. But like that's going to take a long time to spend £1 million that way, right? You probably are going to need probably want some type of large expense at some point out of that.
Yeah, of course. Because as we know, you're trying to get it into the system. Yeah. So you're trying to get it into the system to spend it legitimately on something of value.
Yeah, it's why sometimes you drive past like very normal houses and drive a Ferrari on the driveway or something. You go, bro, like tell me you're a drug dealer about telling me you're a drug dealer. Like clearly you get paid a lot of cash and you've gone down the dealership. Like you've got hundreds of thousands just knocking around. You would love to buy a bigger house, but you can't because the bank won't accept this money. You can't put it into the bank. But your mate's a car dealer and he's
Yeah.
accepted a few bags of cash and he's giving you a Ferrari. It's like, bro, the tax man is going to be all over your ass.
Rocked up with the old Scarface suitcase and said, right, I want that one there.
Yeah, just look the other way. It's like, oh, is there 400 grand in there? I thought it was only 300. Sorry, mate. Yeah, like money almost doesn't become a thing because that's the problem, isn't it? In the financial world that we live in, if you've got money that is illegal, it's nearly worthless. Nearly. It's just so hard to spend it without getting caught.
Yeah.
Especially if you want to stay in the same country. But then the third tweet we've got on this one, I thought you might like this one.
Loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Go on.
Yeah, because it was eye-opening to me and hopefully to our audience members as well, that it's only been a crime since 1986 in terms of money laundering, and the term itself only goes back to the 1970s in terms of money laundering, because money laundering is actually a fake fiat era crime, and therefore it presupposes that the state has the right to know nearly every financial transaction made by its citizens, despite the Fourth Amendment. So, prior to the 1970s stroke 1986 Act, you could spend your money however you liked and no one would have to know.
Goddamn heathens. Thank
Yeah.
God for 1971 coming off the gold standard. Restore some law and order. How dare people? Because essentially all money laundering really is the number one reason for laundering money really is tax evasion, right?
Yeah.
And I used to think like back in the day, oh yeah, people should pay their taxes, But now I'm like, with my eyes wide open, it's like, oh, okay.
Now what about the roads?
What about the roads? Yeah.
Yeah, I think everyone comes to the same conclusion. One of my friends who I always speak to about this kind of stuff, I'm like, literally, you could double the tax income. You could tax everyone 97%. But the government would find every way to fucking spend that money and siphon it off. Even if it was a good government, they would still find a way to spend that money on crap. Like we've got things which I think are good, but there's not the consideration of the greater good. It's a good of the minority now, isn't it? And you end up with lots of these shitty little schemes which just waste money.
Yeah, well, government's a double whammy, right? It's corrupt and inefficient. So, like the majority of money is very efficiently used when it first comes in because it's filtered out right into the rich cat's pockets, and then the little bit that's left over, they just go and give it to a load of minimum wage people that can't be asked. And guess what? The projects don't go very well, but they don't care. They print enough money just to keep it all going by and large, and just keep the government expanding more and more and more and absorbing more and more public services. So eventually you end up in communism. But I did think it was very interesting, just this little chart that even the term money laundering, starts around 1971. Suddenly, the fiat standard comes in. Never a problem with money laundering when it went on the gold standard, but suddenly on fiat, we suddenly started caring.
It's like it's almost been planned. Just really strange, big coincidence.
Yeah, they really did preempt the fact that they needed to have names and addresses on the end of each transaction. Yeah, and like we've seen, they kind of did it in the early days on large transactions of like $10,000 and above, and that was back in the 1970s, right? Which is technically, when you buy a house, we want to know who bought it and who sold it. They're the types of transactions. But then eventually the 10,000 never moved. Obviously, the price of the dollar did move. The 10,000 isn't a house now, it's a small car. And not only are they not moving that up, they want to move it down to more like $500. And you go, if we got that much of a problem with people laundering money, do we have that many drug dealers that exist? Or are they doing this for another reason? And the fact that they really need to know where all the money is because they're getting very, very nervous. It's about to collapse. And when it does, they want to be able to freeze the money properly and not have any, or have the individuals have pots of cash sat in institutions that they don't know about.
Well, it's a classic case of they always get a little bit scared and a little bit worried when people are making money and they're not getting a piece of it. And we're seeing it with even the likes of BlackRock and others jumping in on the whole Bitcoin ETF. So I appreciate it's not a tax, but it's just like, well, we want a bit of that. And so I don't think anybody's safe with regards to being able to do what they want. And Bitcoin, as we know, has always been that solution outside of the state.
Yeah. But it's interesting that, just to rewind, that obviously this story is about Samurai Wallet getting shut down, the developers arrested, which it's super sad to see it. These are just normal guys, normal Bitcoiners. And obviously they're being arrested and shut down for a crime that has only existed for 50 years. This wasn't a crime before. This is literally just taking people's money and taking your name off it and giving it back, right? It's and it doesn't need to be for nefarious reasons, right? I was looking at it purely from a privacy point of view, going, it would be nice that only if I knew how much Bitcoin I had. I don't really want the government necessarily to know.
Yeah.
And but that, even probably saying that out loud, is technically a crime in my own government's eyes. And it's just nuts. It's nuts that that's the world we live in, right? If you want to hide how much money you have from your own government, then there's probably a crime you've committed along the way, and they can put you in prison for that. It's nuts. And I hope the Samurai guys, I hope there's some kind of miracle that gets them out, but I sadly don't think that any of them will see the light of day. Or maybe one of them will. If one of them decides to rat, then the rest maybe one gets a deal, provided they hand over all the private chats and provide evidence against the others. Because as we know, right, the money laundering regulation and then the crimes that sit behind it, they're very, very harsh. Financial crime is punished. Like, it does not take long for you to get to a 100-year sentence in that world.
Yeah.
And they've been running essentially a money laundering service for the best part of a decade.
Yeah.
So each transaction, I think, is like up to
it'll
10
hold. Yeah, exactly.
And they've done probably millions of transactions. So if you times a million by 100, I think you get over a human lifetime. So
yeah, it's not looking good.
It sucks to be them, because this is the type of thing, like sometimes you talk about like how can we contribute to Bitcoin and that kind of stuff. Like, this is the type of thing that I would love to be able to do, but you just see this and go, fair play to the guys that do it. But I would never look at this type of stuff. It probably means I'm a coward, but obviously, having worked in this regulation market before, I know how seriously this is taken. And even though these services are great for Bitcoin, the risk to myself personally, it's my life, right? And I make one misstep and this happens to me.
And also as well, it sometimes it can be a happy mistake that it was set up to do one thing from a pure Bitcoin perspective of being able to mix it and, literally take one shitcoin and then make it into another and kind of wash it that way. But then others have taken it and flipped it on its head. It's like, certain drugs that you can get over the counter, I'm sure then people making money out of that, and it's like, oh, okay, right, well, it wasn't intended in that way, but now we can make money that way. And so it could be an innocent mistake that is now obviously costing the founders their livelihood.
Yeah. And their life.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Brighter news. We have got some good news today. Not just slamming Bitcoin companies, but yeah, Strike is doing well. Talk to us about Strike.
Well, Strike, Mr. Maulers, Jack Maulers. We've not heard a lot from him, although Jack is one of those guys where he comes up, pops up, gives us a little bit of spiel, and then off he goes, back to working in an empty closet with Crocs on. But this time, Strike is ready to launch into Europe. So Strike allows people to quickly, through an EPOS system, send lightning payments through there. So this is revolutionary because it's now adding in the fact that Strike serves America. I think it serves parts of Africa, and now it's here in Europe as well.
When it says Europe, this is so much I was trying to find. Which countries is it talking about? The EU? Does it include the UK?
It's vague. It's breaking. Yeah. It's just in. Let it breathe, Dr. Evil 10%. Maybe we'll have an update next week on it.
Yeah, because I've tried looking around. But I haven't found if it specifies what country.
Look.
Are we in the UK? Can we start using a Bitcoin bank?
No, I'm pretty sure it's just Europe in the Euro.
Disappointment. Yeah, so
yeah, it's good that they finally.
Good bit of news.
Yeah, they
probably won't talk too much.
Yeah, they're in America, and I think they'd expanded to a couple of random countries around the world. But to come to Europe and basically now be able to do Strike with the Euro, it's pretty decent. I think I know they've got quite a lot of criticism over the last couple of probably months, maybe year, on Bitcoin Twitter, because they're essentially calling them the PayPal of Bitcoin, which isn't real Bitcoin. But I don't know. I think the criticism is unfair. I think he's definitely trying to do something good here. Is it the perfect way that Bitcoin's designed to work and be all custodial and that kind of stuff? No, it's not. But I was at a play date with my 5-year-old and around their house, and I think it already got out that I was a Bitcoiner. So the dad comes up to me and he's like, "It's this Bitcoin thing." Da, da. First question that a lot of people ask, actually, no, it's second. First question is about price. So got to get rid of that one, obviously. And second,
wait, when you say price, as in, is it too high now? I've missed the boat.
It's like, I've heard it's been going up, but it's down quite a bit at the moment, isn't it?
Oh, classic. Yeah,
that classic. One. I'm like, it's at 50k a coin. He's like, is that good? And there's no measurement, is there? Like, clearly hasn't been tracking it. Like, so in his head, 50k a coin is like, I might as well have just said, if I just said £1 million a coin, he'd have gone, oh, right. Like,
yeah.
It doesn't, he has no context to put that price against. He always heard is in the market, apparently Bitcoin's down a lot at the moment.
Yeah, because 3 months ago, if you'd have started then, you would have had a 50% increase of where you're at right now. So
it's too late. When it hits 100k in a couple of months, it would be too late then. When it hits 250 grand by the end of the year, it's too late, isn't it? then it'll be the following one. It'll be when it hits 1 million. But it's too late. Like I said, I'm holding out for the trilly. I want to be a trillionaire.
He will be in sats. You can actually no. Yeah, we're trillionaire in like Zimbabwe dollars.
Yeah, but eventually we will be trillionaires.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
it's inevitable. And people who may be listening who don't understand that, my advice is turn off the fucking pod. You're not ready.
Yeah, but anyway, the reason I brought up the story was the guy that after he's talking about price, the next question is, how do you spend Bitcoin then? How do you spend it? So obviously, it's a little bit of a tough one to answer at the moment, and it's a little bit of a long-winded answer, which is, well, you can spend it if you really want to, but we're kind of in a accumulation phase of a new currency where you're more likely to earn your fiat, spend your fiat, and then you stack in Bitcoin. And yeah, you can spend it, but yes, but it's largely a little bit clunky, and you can't spend it in a lot of places at the moment. So that was interesting. That was his second question, right? And I think it's quite common. So bringing it back to the article, that's what Strike's trying to address, right? This is he's bringing a very simple PayPal type app, but for Bitcoin, and you can pay. Obviously, his USP for his product is you can hold Bitcoin essentially in your wallet on Strike, but when you pay for stuff, depending on what countries you're in or whatever the person wants, they can receive it in any currency they want. So if you're in America, I can pay in Bitcoin and the person gets dollars. If I'm in Europe, I can pay in Bitcoin and they get euros. Or they could pay euros to me and I get Bitcoin. That's the genius of the products he's built. So this allows people to genuinely live on a Bitcoin standard. You can load up your wallet with your Bitcoin and you can travel all around the world, provided they accept Strike. It doesn't matter what, you don't have to ask, do you accept Bitcoin? All you have to ask is, do you accept Strike? And then you go, yeah. And you go, yeah, tap your card.
Strike, is it just like an Apple Pay kind of thing? Is that how it works? I mean, like, obviously I've never been able to use it yet.
Yeah, it's a similar type service. Yeah, I think it's more like like how Revolut originally was like a prepaid card.
Yeah,
pretty sure it's similar to that.
So is it attached to some kind of like payment system like Visa as well? Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, makes sense. And it's just in the background how it flicks things around. So if it is in the UK, it's something I'll be signing up. So obviously I'll be waiting for the news, get my Strike account set up. I think everyone else will on this, and Miss No Show won't, because Miss No Show won't know it's going on.
It's got in there.
Wow.
One of them, like, literally, it's been a few years by since I mentioned it, but if Brexit hadn't have happened, we'd probably be included in this Strike rollout, but because it did, we're not.
Yeah.
Although
Miss No Show might actually use Strike through Starbucks.
If you had any Bitcoin to spend.
Yeah.
Puts it on the credit card, I've heard.
Get here, Miss No Show.
Get on the pod, we'll put you right.
Yeah, that's the one. There'll be a petition out, I'm sure.
Got a few people that listen that need to get on the pod. Mrs. No Show. Should get the everyman on. Got young MBA.
Yeah, the everyday man. Yeah.
I've been trying to convince him to come on, but he feels like he won't know enough to know what he's talking about.
Young MBA.
You come on.
He's welcome.
No, I just talk gibberish.
Yeah, you're here for to make people feel that
they can relate.
To make them feel like they're late.
The listeners might be retarded, but there's someone more retarded on the show.
And we're back to being PC. I think we've had a few weeks where we haven't offended several listeners. And we're back.
And we're now in. No one listens our past 20 minutes other than literally the people we know. We could just have literally a complete chat now about mates, family. They're the only people listening at this point. I foresee the stats. I think nearly every random listener drops after about 20 to 40 minutes. They don't make it any further. But
Do we get any international still?
Yeah, loads.
What
loads.
was it Stefan? Was that the name of the random guy who messages?
Yeah, he's the Australian guy. Yeah, and that's the beautiful thing about obviously Apple Podcasts and YouTube. It's not really, they don't just target the UK audience. It's all over the place. Yeah, so there's people from all around the world. All right, should we go back onto your favorite topic anyway?
We love it. We love it. We love it. Inflation Weekly, bring it on. No, but this is a really good one, actually.
See if he can come twice in one night.
Twice? Why not make it thrice? So, I didn't realize until I got into the comments of who's written it. So it's Mr. Parabolic, isn't it?
Yeah.
So his tweet, it's difficult to describe how insane a 25% tax on unrealized capital gains is. Not a one-time 25% hit. It's compounding, annually taking 25% of every dollar of potential increase before it can grow. Not an exaggeration to say it could single-handedly crush the economy. I will leave the United States passing this. Retardio. So really, really, really interesting because if you think about it, so you have to invest because your dollars or pounds, whatever currency you're in, devalues every single year. So you've got £10, it's going to be hit by 10% inflation when they're being nice. When they're being dickheads, 20-30% per year, like we've seen over the pandemic. Sorry, not pandemic, lockdowns. And so you're kind of fighting against that. You want to be able to retire. You don't want to be a wage slave for the whole of your life. But now you're making too much money. Some people are getting out, so we're going to have to put a tax on top. So that 10% which you're getting every year, if you're investing right, it's no longer 10%, it's 7.5%. So we're going to take 25% of it. So every year you're going to get your gains taken. And if you keep on leaving these investments in, you get a bumper year, you get taxed. Oh, you've made a loss this year. Doesn't matter. You don't get any money back, do you? And it seems to be something which Biden is desperately trying to push through, which is really, really strange. It's either that he has no financial understanding, or the countries are really this fucked and they need to really tie people in.
Well, no, I was thinking about this, and I was also digging into the weeds. It's only for people earning over $1 million plus. So
it's only them, so it'll just stay as them.
Well, it'll start off there, no doubt.
And when you say earning, does that include assets? Is it net worth, or is it $1 million per year? Oh, it's only people who have assets over $1 million. What's the average house price in America? Probably 500,000.
Yeah.
Then if you want to retire, you need 2 million, 1.5. Everyone's in there.
Yeah. Well, it's the way it'll be. No doubt, it'll be spun, won't it? So the spin is you'll have on one side debt relief for those that have a student loan. So that will have a large bunch of people,
and tax the rich.
Yeah, and therefore, what I'm doing is I'm taxing the rich on this million figure, and there'll be a finite number of those in comparison. So you'll be playing the boards in terms of that, and then it'll swing round, won't it? And somehow that will capture everybody in, and it all goes to their 34 trillion debt deficit.
The average wage in the US, I want to say, has gone to 60 or 70 grand now. It's gone ridiculous. Like the UK wages have not tracked the US ones.
Far from it.
So literally everyone goes into higher tax bands. Everyone's savings go into a higher tax band. So it's literally like everyone becomes rich eventually because the money's devalued, and therefore you got you're getting paid more, but you're not getting as much value. Now, one of the things which I thought was really interesting is obviously Mr. Parabolic's kicking off. Good luck leaving, bro. Not as easy as it sounds. I already have another passport.
Yeah.
And what he doesn't realize, what people are telling him, which I didn't realize happened in America, is there seems to be a leaving tax.
Yep. Once you're a US citizen, you are forever a tax citizen of America.
It's 40%.
Yep. Yeah, you owe it forever. It's actually the only country on earth that you can never
Not the only one.
Oh, who else is there?
The socialist state of Norway. 40% again, yeah. You can't leave Norway. I saw someone else who I follow.
Okay.
Saying that they struggle to leave, and when we put more tax on, they're tempted, but then they got 40% pain of leaving.
Yeah, it's kind of nuts because obviously when you look at America, you know, and then you compare it to UK, Europe, and you think, oh, we're not that dissimilar, but that really is a big difference. Essentially, it means if you ever become a US citizen, you can never relinquish it. So it was one of the things that put me off moving to Puerto Rico because as part of it, to really get a lot of the tax benefit, some of it comes early on when you set up a business and all that stuff. But then when you become a citizen, there's then a load more taxable benefits. But when I looked into it, I went, hold on, I become a US citizen here, and you can never relinquish it. I can relinquish my UK citizenship.
I thought you could relinquish it.
No, that's why they're saying on here, you are forever a US citizen, whether you become a citizen somewhere else or not, and forever and a day you owe them their 40% tax.
And they can also tax you abroad when you earn over a certain amount, can't they?
Yeah, it's as if
that was it the Patriot Act?
Who knows what it is, but their tax laws say you can leave America, go and live in fucking Zimbabwe, and earn your money there. That government will want their taxation, but the American government is sat there going, "Oh no, you still owe us as well, forever." Even if you relinquish your US citizenship, fully become living in Zimbabwe, they don't care. You owe us money.
This is just. I'd love to find someone aside from the politicians who are trying to do this who actually agree with this, but I suppose they'll be fed socialist dreams around paying off, like Sir Neverlook said, around, oh yeah, pay off student loans, or it'll pay the poor, whereas in fact most of this will then go through the siphon of being siphoned off to Ukraine and flowing back into the people's back pockets through their usual money laundering antics.
Yeah, well, this bill, right, it's not been passed, it's proposed, but there's two massive things in it. So it's raising capital gains from 20% to 44.6. And then this 25% tax on unrealized capital gains. And for anyone that doesn't even know what that is, it literally destroys the hodl mentality of Bitcoin, right? So if let's say you have your 100 grand of Bitcoin and it's got 100 grand worth of gains in it. So you just got that Bitcoin for free directly from a block from Satoshi, right? So you got 100K of gains. Usually, if you were to sell that Bitcoin into fiat, there would be 100 grand of gain there, which by and large in the UK it's 20%, or on this bill it'd be 44%. So you would have to give, of the 100 grand profit, you'd have to give 44 grand to the US government with this bill. However, that's if you sell the asset. If you don't sell the asset and you go, you know what, I know I've got 100 grand of Bitcoin here, but I'm going to keep hodling because I'm a Bitcoiner, right? I don't need to sell this. I'm going to continue to stack. Under this law, in year one, 25 grand of the 100K goes off to the US government. Unrealized capital gains. You haven't touched it. You haven't made a trade yet. 25K. So now you've only got 75. Now, Bitcoin might do its thing, but let's just assume Bitcoin stays the same price. Next year happens. Oh, we want 25% of this 75 now. So what's that? Another 20K comes out. Boom. Now you've only got 55K. And they keep going. They keep taking a quarter at a time, which essentially what this is it's inflation on steroids. They figured out a way of inflating Bitcoin here because this is essentially the reason why we can't put our dollars or our pounds into the bank account is because inflation is roughly freaking 25% a year anyway. So if you leave it in there for long enough, your 100 grand does become 10 grand. It still looks like it says 100 on your bank balance, but if you leave it in there for 20 years, it's got the spending power of 10,000. So it forces you to spend it or invest it. You have to do something. If this bill was to be passed, it does the same in Bitcoin because you can't hodl Bitcoin in America under this law because they will whittle you down by a quarter at a time, and eventually it's like the halving, but it's the quarterning. Every year you get quartered, and it doesn't take many quarters until you're out. So you may as well just go, well, screw it. I've got 100 grand of Bitcoin. I'm about to lose 25% of it. You just have to move it somewhere, wouldn't you? Or just spend it on something.
Yeah, but it also even affects pensions and investments. Like someone wants to retire, hard fought for money. You've paid tax every single year of, whatever it is in the US, probably 50-60% in
total. Make pensions exempt.
It'll be for high net. Well, this is saying people earn over $1 million, then it'll be.
I agree. I think pensions will be exempt because they can then, essentially the money goes to them, and then they can control it better that way. It's just simply because Bitcoin is outside of the system. So how can we, try and get control once again? And we've always said it, because I'm sat here thinking, well, it just reminds me of the fear mongering of people can't hold gold, or once upon a time couldn't hold gold in the US. And this is it. So there'll be people, of course, that will simply not declare. But then there'll be others that will have Bitcoin and they'll be worried that, well, I've got some. How will they know? But then they'll just do it because of the fear. And to Mr. Orland's point, eventually they could be whittled away if we go for a couple of bear market years.
Yeah. Or yeah, it's going to be devastating if because this is how they essentially keep the poor, right? Because for the super rich, they avoid all this stuff. Like the super rich don't pay any taxes. They're above that. Their money's moving around in various different unstructured freaking shell companies.
I would love to see all Pelosi, if this comes true, see all Pelosi's accounts on this, since she is the most successful trader of all time.
Exactly, yeah. But this isn't just attacking Bitcoin. Like I think it is probably aimed our way, but this is just for people that have stocks and shares, and these are just normal everyday people trying to work, trying to earn a bit of money. And yeah, like at the moment, if you're worth less than $1 million, then this doesn't apply to you, so don't worry. But as we know, the $10,000 limit of money laundering was set 50 years ago, and they just went, don't worry. And then now suddenly everybody is hitting that constantly, and they're moving the barrier down. This is the same with this one, right? And this essentially just keeps everybody down. It's nearly impossible. Obviously, we were massively into our investing, when we go back 10 years, we knew earning good money in your job is great, but you're not going to be able to realistically retire early unless you make your money work for you. And so investing was genuinely an option, and you go, let's have a go at this. And these types of laws coming in where you double the cap gains, or more than double it, and then if you get punished for holding an asset for longer than a year, they're literally telling you, no, you got to sell everything in the year, otherwise we'll just take 25% of it anyway.
Yeah, I still to this point stand by our thought process of there is not a way out for people to be secure without investing. And pensions don't include investing, because that's not, you have to do it.
Unless you're going to give a lot of HJs.
That's investing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, you got to be ambitious, and I think there's got to be a lot of training to get up to that level, though.
It's just being an entrepreneur.
But yeah, it's.
No, maybe now I know why I didn't go on Dragon's Den.
My business is giving HJs. How many are you going to give a day? 10,000 at £1 each.
Set up a franchise. Wherever you see,
I think I missed that episode.
Wherever you see the golden arches, there's a HJ just around the corner, baby. There'll be someone there. It didn't even reply to my email.
Dr. Evil 10% laughing with his head up for those and just listening.
I can't speak. Like, it's the most retarded things I've ever heard. Right, anyway. Fucking hell. Yeah, so
it's the tears of sadness, not tears of joy.
it's the tears of sadness that this franchise never took off.
Yeah, exactly.
You're gutted you didn't come up with the idea first.
Exactly.
I might go.
You've just been going. You're just a solo trader doing it around B&M.
Mine's not. I was going to say my idea is not the solo trader; it's a double. Go skiing. Undercut your prices by going double. But anyway, on to this one. I think obviously we talked about the trap on this one, but there's the other side of it is that the US is absolutely fucking broke. It can't survive on its current, so it needs more tax. It's literally a heroin addict, and we talked about this before, that it's a tax for property, it's a tax for food, it's an income tax. Now we're going for capital gains tax. We've got death tax. We've got inheritance tax. We've got, I don't know what the hell else in the US, but we've got fuel tax. We've even got tax on our energy, which comes into our houses. And then you've got national insurance tax as well. You've got council tax in the UK, which is the equivalent of the property tax. Road tax for your vehicle. You've got company tax, so the company who actually pays you have got to pay tax in the first place. You've got import tax if you buy anything from abroad. You're kind of going, this hasn't just happened all at once, like as in,
Correct.
Oh yeah, we're going to tax all this. This has been gradual. I think it was in the late 80s when they tried to introduce poll tax, which my understanding is about voting. So to vote, you've got to pay tax, and everyone rioted when that happened. But we have just got drowned in taxes, and I think this is just another stage for taxes.
One thing I just realized as well, kind of similarly going back to the previous story, is that these initiatives will be coming out more and more so because of the election year, but some of them will stick, and they'll have to stick because of the situation that the US is in terms of its deficit and the 34 trillion and counting.
Well, we're at the Ponzi scheme, and we're at the bit where it's really starting to crack.
Correct, because it's getting faster and faster in terms of the debt and how it's going up quicker and quicker.
And we're seeing a top 10 country start to go into rapid inflation. Obviously, nowhere near hyperinflation, but I'm sure Argentina wasn't in hyperinflation initially, and Argentina was a top 10 100 years ago.
Well, whilst obviously on the pod and reading quickly, since 2021, Japan lost 1/3 of its value since then. So whilst it's not hyperinflation, that's a significant amount in 3 years alone.
Here's your point. So if the US has inflated the dollar by 40 to 50%, and Japan has got 30% against the dollar, what does that actually make? I'd have to sit down and actually think about what does that actually make Japan's inflation figure. It's not 30%. It's really a lot higher.
Yeah, you're right.
Have we got Mr. Orliton? Always having a good think about that.
No, I don't know. I'm just I want to go back to Japan. I just think like these types of things. I get that it's an election year and stuff, but I think they're honestly testing the waters. I mean, they're just seeing how far they can push people. And
It is debt slavery, isn't it? You know,
yeah,
people aren't in the chains anymore in the fields. It's how can we lock them into work and paying into this weird techno feudalism system.
yeah. Well, eventually you essentially get to 100% tax, don't you? And it's just that you don't get paid for your work and your time anymore. You just get an allowance from the government. And
you have to go and pick up your allowed food from the shop.
Yeah. And we're in communism, right? It's like, don't worry, the government look after you, they look after everything. But look, we know that doesn't work, but it seems to be where we're going.
Well, they've managed to brainwash the people in universities, haven't they? Starting with the college professors, and it seems to be leaking out into the younger generations.
That's what I'm really worried about, right? I think that is what that is the kind of time frames they're waiting for. They're waiting for these new university students that have been completely brainwashed with the ESG, communism, and all this stuff. They're waiting for them to be in leadership positions. So that we only need to wait maybe a decade, potentially two, and these 18-year-olds are going to be 30, 40. They'll be running countries and businesses, and they've been propaganded to hell, and they're going to be super easy just to guide into communism.
Agreed.
I'm almost going to welcome it in.
I always see like these memes, and it's like the 25-year-old gender studies student telling someone who's come from Yugoslavia, but it wasn't real socialism.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's funny how every single time socialism is brought in, it has the same net result of fuckloads of people dead and through either being shot or being starved. But we somehow think it's a good idea to go into socialism because the last time it wasn't proper socialism.
I know. I love these people. I actually got my haircut today, and the barbers that I found, it's run by this Iranian guy, and I always like chatting to him because his background's super interesting. Literally comes from Iran. You know, only been here a couple of years, learned English. He's just grinding, really just trying to make it by. Comes from a super tough background, all his family back home. But today, a guy that's working with him, he's from Iraq, done the same thing. He's 24 now, came over when he was 21, didn't speak a word of English. He's learned English. It's still very broken, but he's just trying, and he's just trying to earn as much money as he can. He does barbering the day, he delivers takeaways at night. And obviously, both of these people come from countries that have been on the receiving end of the Fiat wars. You know, Iran and Iraq are just, they've got like natural resources, so they've just been pillaged. Probably Iran's been cut off financially, it's on the sanctions list, so they basically don't exist for the rest of the world. Iraq clearly had 20 years of being
Wasn't Iran a westernized Middle Eastern country, and then the Americans overthrew the government?
I don't know. But
I'm pretty sure it's one of those.
Not too sure on the background of Iran, but it sounds about right because that sounds like the playbook of most of them.
Yeah, but like you said, that mid-20, 30-year-old gender studies person with you go, you think you're so persecuted and life is so tough, right? Like clearly we're obviously articulating here how they're trying to limit us financially and keeping us down, but we're still on the good side of stuff because we're in the countries that they want to keep kind of not blown to pieces for long as they can get, because they want to live in these countries, so they keep them kind of habitable for us. But go and have a look at the countries they pillaged and go talk to the people that have lived there and that have fled. these Iranians, Iraqis, that's the they're the people that really have suffered through this. They've they've had family members blown to smithereens and stuff. And to be fair to them, they've come to the countries that did it, and they're going, "We just want to make a living. I had no life there." And you just go, "Fair play," and you've got to learn the language. And then you got some fucking stuck-up student that's obviously buying the Western propaganda. It's like, look at the country you're supporting. Look at what it's doing to people like this.
Yeah.
They are coming over here with nothing. They all live in a flat. I live in a tiny little town in the middle of nowhere. They all live in one flat. These guys all live together, just trying to make it. Just cutting hair, live doing takeaways. And I just go, I respect them, and I always try and tip them as much as I can. But I go, it's nothing. Like, this isn't going to get you out. A tenner tip not going to do anything. But yeah, it's good to get grounded sometimes, because you just see sometimes that so often we're disconnected from the damage we're doing. I know we've probably all seen pictures of Gaza, we've all seen pictures of Iraq blown to smithereens, and then you just suddenly you see an Iraqi in your face, and he's cutting your hair, and he's talking about where he's come from. You're like, oh my God, I can't even imagine being you and growing up in that. It's yeah.
Yeah.
My barbers are exactly the same, by the way. Just from Kurdistan, but came to the UK young, set up a business. Worked super hard, literally open 7 days a week, and then got to a really good position of where they are at right now. But the reason why I continue to go to them is because I just respect their hustle, and much rather give them my money than anywhere else. And they're all, really super nice. So still haven't got Bitcoin, despite me talking about it as much as I tried to.
Anyway, on that point, should we move on to the next one?
Keep going. I know, you know what, I should say, apologies, actually. That was very selfish of us, Mr. Rawlin. We're talking about a subject that really isolates Dr. Evil 10%. So, yeah, we'll stop all talk about barbers. Trim talk. We'll have that separate convo with that.
Right. So should we go and talk about the next one about the collapse? I'm just like,
yeah, he has nothing to add to that.
Nothing to add to that. Talk about barbers. It was boring me. So the next one's a nice little article about the collapse of empires, and just talking about the different indicators, because we do talk about this every single week. So it's a good article to bring in, and it kind of blends all the different stories together. So Alan B. Watts puts a few indicators about inflation remaining stubbornly high, surpassing 1 trillion a year just to service the interest on the national debt. TikTok ban as a foot in the door technique to try to control the internet. DOJ arresting samurai devs. The remarkably idiotic unrealized capital gains tax proposed by Biden. So all really good points. You've got the first one. It's high because we're printing so much fucking money. 2, the debt. Once again, who does the debt belong to, and why the fuck is there interest payments if it's done by the government? If the Fed belonged to the US government, and the TikTok ban, I disagree with that point. A foot in the door to control the internet, because they controlled it anyway for the last 4 years. It's evident. TikTok is just, it's not going to bring anything about. They've got all the media sources. They got Facebook. They got Twitter. Well, they had Twitter, Instagram, and all the others. So it's not really anything which will happen. But the DOJ, Samurai cutting off that private transactions, and then the capital gains to make sure that you are chained up in the fiat debt cycle for as long as you're breathing. So yeah, it's a good summary of everything which we talked about tonight, actually.
Yeah, and I think the TikTok ban probably is more notable than you think, just because it does highlight for anyone that isn't paying attention that there are a load of social networks that are under control, but TikTok, technically, because it's based in China, and depending on how much you believe in it all, which I must admit I don't believe in it, so maybe it isn't notable, but if you do believe that China and Russia and America all are our enemies, then essentially TikTok represents a social media network that is very prevalent in America and across Europe, but is not controlled by them. So they can't pass any regulations or laws that control TikTok. It's largely owned by China. And so by openly banning it, it kind of, even for the normie, it goes, hold on, why would they ban something that is from China? And it does just highlight the fact that, well, they control the rest. They got backdoors into all of them and they can look through them as much as they want, and they love doing that. But China behind TikTok go, no, you're not looking. We're looking. We're not going to share it to you. And they go, well, no, we don't want you to do that. And it's obviously they want to be able to control what narratives get pushed. This is the propaganda channels, right? This is the news network that only talks about stories that they want to talk about. Social media networks do the same. Obviously, there's a war against misinformation at the moment. They want to be able to control all that. And yeah, but obviously everything else, yeah, the debt, inflation, arresting samurai devs, cap gains tax. This is like, I still remember the day where you guys asked me like, when are you going to admit that maybe you're wrong and that the fiat isn't collapsing? That's when all the signs tell me it's not. When something is telling me it's not. Yeah, and so
I mean, such as someone coming in, cutting taxes,
yep.
deregulating the market, reducing the government by 2/3. These are all the kind of like signs where you say, actually, we could survive in like this. And the money printing is
allowing innovation, dropping regulation. Genuinely trying to go. There's someone that made sense, right? This, as we were discussing before, like, what would I expect Japan to do? Yeah, they're in trouble. The two options that you read out in that article are just going to both make it even worse, like just compounding the problem. You go, why is no one saying, how about we make money more sensibly? How about we cut taxes? We cut various things, and fundamentally, when we cut taxes, still make sure we deliver good public services, but spend money more efficiently and just cut our costs. Just it's someone heading up one of these big countries to actually make sense, where it doesn't just go, nah,
this is
same lies.
It's a classic austerity as well. So we'll stop spending as much as we're spending, and maybe we'll stop importing as much as we're importing, and we'll start to think what we can do to export and therefore raise it that way. No, none of that has happened.
Oh yeah, like the US, it exports dollars. It doesn't have to import. It doesn't have to export shit.
No.
But like Millet had talked about earlier that he seems to have done things, but like I said, there's something off about him. Like we liked him at first, but the initial signs about what he's done, he's cut government, he's cut spending, he's cut welfare programs, and I think they're actually had a surplus or a level budget for the first time. And these are all the kind of things. But like I said, something's really off about him. I don't know I don't know what's going on. But we'll wait and watch because everything looks fine from the outside, and he is doing everything right. Similar to Bukalele as well, who decided that he'd investigate his whole party for corruption. So he wants to be clean. It seems like he wants his party to be as clean as possible.
Yeah, I think Bukalele, I'm probably, I don't know what level of confidence would I be at? Probably 70 or 80 that he's legit, but that's a decent chunk. That means that he's not.
It was his last election though, when he got some like 90%, which set some alarm bells because I wanted to believe to be everything fine because he's doing everything right.
Yeah.
But when he gets like 90%, you're like, that can't be true. Because
Yeah.
people are religious with politics. They'll still vote for the Reds over the Blues just because they've always voted red and because their dad voted for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It'll be an interesting one to watch, that one as well. And obviously we already talked about the extension of term as well, but he kind of needed that for things to have got into a place where needed to have got. Yeah, it's obviously we got lots of plates spinning in terms of that, because we've got the US and obviously the elections coming up and what they'll do there.
We got
Turkey's
Japan.
always one.
Japan's on the radar now.
Yeah, Japan. Japan is an interesting one, a real use case of where's it going, because it's a big one.
Yeah, so a few interesting things in the global arena to see what's going on. So it's just impossible to work out how quick or how slow this is all going to happen, though. But it is playing out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be next year, it could be in 10, could be in 20 years, but
yeah.
I think I wouldn't want to bet on longer than 20 years. It's going to be in our lifetimes. This is going to
for sure.
seriously.
I just don't know if it'll go past 10 years. Like, it just seems to be going so quickly. But, you know, the extension would be CBDCs, and we end up like literally going down to the shop and going, this is your shopping basket for the week.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I just worked like 50 hours this week. Yeah, this is what you're having. You got some lovely soy. You got some onions. You've got some Mountain Dew. And of course, you got your multivitamin. I'm like, I'm meant to eat all this. Yeah, lovely soy. Enjoy that every day.
Also, I do think sometimes CBDCs are a bit of a, it's almost like their version of a Trojan horse, just to make us like look in a different direction. Because in reality, they can do it now, right? If they wanted to put a carbon tax and restrict your spending on certain items, they
They're
can
doing
do
that in
that
Canada.
right now.
They have a carbon tax, and they keep on putting more percentages on the carbon tax.
Yeah, all they got to do, it's just like how they did it on, was it sugar, fat, and all that type of content on products. They had to display it on the front. All you have to do is go, oh yeah, as well as a price, you have to put how much carbon is on it. So each time you buzz it, it adds it to some type of account on your card, like how much carbon you've bought in that shop. And once you hit a limit, it fucking doesn't work. It doesn't matter how much money you put in your account, it just doesn't stop. You're over your carbon limit. It's a piece of
Private
piss. You don't
companies
need
have already
CBDC.
started. They've already started doing it. Private companies, haven't they?
Yeah, some have volunteered to do it. Yeah, so I honestly think it's like they've almost given us CBDCs for people like us to attack it, and they're secretly just rolling it out into your normal bank account anyway. Going lol, keep attacking CBDCs. Good one, good one. They have no intention of rolling it out. They can't roll it out. They haven't got the technical know-how of how to recreate all this stuff on different rails and all that kind of stuff. There's a reason why we're still using Swift. It was built in the fucking 80s, right? They can't innovate past where they are.
Swift, wasn't it built in the 60s?
The 60s then, a fucking long time ago, right? So
yeah, you're right.
So it's much more likely that they just tell all the banks that, and that, again, they'll do it by regulation because the government can't innovate themselves. All the government does is pass regulation. And if they pass regulation that says you have to collect the carbon footprint of every transaction, that will just cascade down on all retailers now suddenly starting to do it, and magically they get what they want, even though they did nothing.
Yeah.
Whereas a CBDC requires them to do something, which means that's unlikely because they have to actually build some tech. Government can't do that. They just control from the top via fear and violence.
Here's one that I thought of and I wanted to share as well, and it's going back to our guy Klaus, because it happened to me the other day in terms of the phrase "you'll own nothing and you'll be happy" is it's already happening right in front of our faces. So if you want to watch a certain film, you typically will have to find it on a certain platform. And let's say you subscribe to Netflix, but actually it's not on Netflix, it's on Hulu, or it's not on Hulu, it's on Prime. So we are already experiencing your own nothing, because back in the day you used to have the DVD or even the VHS if we're going really far back, and you could watch that film whenever you wanted to. But these days you are happier, but you're not, because you don't actually own that thing. And it's the thing with
it's music, film, house,
yep,
car.
exactly.
And even people using Klarna to buy a Domino's.
Yep. All these things that you think, oh, that's cool, but no, you don't actually own it. And people are just sleepwalking into all of this.
I was going to say your phones as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Putting stuff on the Never Never, and what's even worse is like if you ever actually I've seen like plenty of stories of where you actually buy a film on Amazon or Apple or whatever, but then that service loses the rights to that film. It's your playlist. It's like someone coming in and just taking the DVD out of your collection and going, "Oh, sorry,
Yep.
the shop you bought that from isn't allowed to sell that DVD anymore, so we're just taking it back." Like, no, like I physically had the item before, but now because it's on a streaming service, Amazon will put your films in a nice little list, and you're like, "Oh, that's great! I have my little list of films that I can watch whenever I want." And occasionally, some will just disappear. They don't tell you, just disappears from your playlist. Sure, I bought that film, and then you have a look. It's like not on the service at all. It's like, yeah, they lost the rights to sell it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's worrying, isn't it? Because I think some of it is like genuine just innovation. Like, it doesn't make sense for everyone to own a physical item. It doesn't make sense for for millions of taxis to exist, for example. It makes more sense for people that have their car and don't use it all the time to use that as a taxi. That's why Uber exists, and Airbnb exists with no hotels, and it makes sense to rent out rooms when you aren't there, weekends away, make some additional income. So I support some of it because it just genuinely seems like efficiency in the system working itself out. But there is a worrying trend that you tend to be renting a lot of things, not owning them. And is that genuinely the right thing and the most efficient way of doing it? Or is it playing into a bigger agenda, which none of us own the thing and the government owns it and we're just renting it off them? Because then obviously you're a prisoner at that point, aren't you? If all the property and all the cars, all the TVs, all the computers, all the DVDs are all owned by a central authority and we just rent them. We're basically living in one big prison, aren't we?
Correct. Yeah. I even experienced it with my my printer the other day. So the printer now, you have to subscribe to paying, and it sounds weird, but it's only like £4 a month. But I could not print until the £4 subscription was paid. So they can see
what's the subscription even for
ink. So you pay £4 for ink, even though, by the way, I didn't need ink. Because they can see exactly how many printouts I've done, what obviously I've printed, when I've printed them, and they can see the measurement of ink that is left in the current cartridges. So when it gets low, so the way they've spun it is that when it gets low, don't worry, we'll send you a new cartridge. Okay, that's great. But in the interim, if you don't pay your monthly subscription, then we'll just stop you being able to print anything.
What
previous?
I'd have disconnected my laptop from the Wi-Fi for a bit and just tried to print without it. See what happens. But yeah, it seems super scammy. I've heard loads of weird things about cars switching off and some subscription. This whole subscription model, you don't own it. yeah, I'm a big fan of owning stuff. I mean, there's just something about owning things anyway, and I do get it. Like I agree that we shouldn't all own everything. I believe in the like obviously the Citadel type environment. We only need one tractor between probably 10 families,
Yeah.
you know, et cetera, et cetera. There's certain like big tools and machinery and all that kind of stuff that it doesn't make sense for every single house to have a 100 grand tractor, right? Whereas you do need a 100 grand tractor to be able to work fields on a large
Yeah.
scale. So you pull your money and you buy that one and that stuff and you share it amongst yourself. But yeah, I think we've got to a point where we're obviously the Citadel is long gone for the majority of people. Everyone is an individual. And I do always laugh about, you know, like sometimes you see those big drone pictures from above and you see each individual garden in each individual house and each garden's got a little patio, a shed, and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
you just know every single person's got the same stuff in there. Yeah,
Correct.
lawnmower, hedge trimmer, all these things, right? And you just go, with a little bit of cooperation on that street, I can guarantee no one is using all those things at the same time. You could have just thrown it over the fence and gone, here you are, do you want this? Do you want this? You know, and
Yeah.
but we just don't do it because we don't have community anymore. It's
I
it's
just paid the
Citadel is
£56
gone.
annual fee for the garden waste to be taken away. And I was just thinking, I know it's only £56, but I should have just talked to my neighbour and just said, why don't we go halves on this? You know, I don't need the garden waste every other week. I'll just give you the half that you've already paid and I'll just use your bin and
Hmm.
let's just do it that way.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, last story of the week.
Last story.
It's a nice light one.
So buys. Yeah, guy. Start again. Buy Bitcoin sign. Guy sells sign for 16 Bitcoin. Jeez, you can tell it's late for those that don't realize it is just gone 11 o'clock right now. So you're watching this on Wednesday and beyond. So you may recall the infamous sign of buy Bitcoin, which also appeared in the Mr. Orlin's wedding, in the wedding photos, thanks to it was the young MBA that was there.
Was indeed. He was my Bitcoin sign guy.
Yeah, 16 Bitcoin it's gone for at auction.
Yeah, $2 million.
So yeah, this is effectively a piece of Bitcoin history memorabilia and art, the original notepad saying just buy Bitcoin or buy Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think fair play. If anything, it's another good sign of hodling, right? Because guy, it's got to be 7, 8 years when he held this behind Janet Yellen's head, saying buy Bitcoin, and fair play for him keeping the notepad in good condition and not selling it beforehand. Yeah, he's kept it nice and he dropped
I
it for
just
15
can't.
Bitcoin.
I just can't believe someone actually paid that much for it. It's such a fair thing to do.
No, you got to remember though, there's some Bitcoin whales out there that have tens of thousands of Bitcoin. They'll shove this up on their wall. That'd be a nice
Yeah,
talking point. What's $2 million when you got billions?
yeah. And
True.
it will just continue to go up in price and value and in significance as well.
Yeah, it's just
Wow.
one of them, isn't it? You know, like if you're a massive Bitcoiner and you got stacks of cash, right? You just go.
Yeah,
It's one of the most famous symbols, isn't it? Like what else? What else is there that you
yeah,
even if you want to spend millions on Bitcoin art on one of ones, yeah, that can't be reprinted, right? This is the original document. There's not that much stuff out there, is there?
no,
It's a lot of digital stuff and it's yeah. But yeah, it just reminds me of similarly, we talked about the halving last week. The first sat that came out after the Bitcoin halving,
yeah,
whole ordinals thing
yeah.
or
The
noons or
block,
whatever it was. That one sat that clearly is just worth one sat, right? Which is, there's 100 million Satoshis in the Bitcoin. So 100 millionth of a Bitcoin, which is, a couple of pence. It sold for $2 million.
Wow.
The first sat of
Wow.
the new halving. And you just go. So then you suddenly look at this and go, oh, right, but someone spent 15 Bitcoin on this buy Bitcoin notepad. At least I can put this on my wall, right? This is genuine. Like, there's not a single Bitcoin meme song that doesn't have the buy Bitcoin sign in it. Like, this is the actual notepad from the guy. Like, for me, like, obviously that's an obtuse amount of money, right? But I get it. But buying the first sat of the halving, dude, I don't give a shit. Like, what are you doing? I guess it's a little bit like a personalized number plate in a way, and some people see it has value, others don't, and some people spend hundreds of thousands on the personalized plate, whereas I just think it's insane. I guess it's a little bit similar about owning a certain type of sat, but
yeah. Unless somehow in the next epoch, I just wanted to throw that in, all of a sudden it starts to become the new in trend of knowing the Bitcoin blocks that you've bought. I can't see it catching on, and it's a waste.
No one will care. A sat's a sat. It's money, isn't it? Like, who cares which block it was in or whatever? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, this, especially when you basically, it's like, but I guess it's like a collector's item. I guess like how you can have what is it, a penny black, which technically has a value of 1 penny, but 100 years ago, and now if you've got a really good condition penny black, it can be worth 200 grand because there's hardly any of them around or something. But come on, that's a very niche market. But anyway, I like the fact that the Bitcoin sign guy hopefully made a bit of money. That's good.
That's the one. Cool. I'm going to wrap us up there. That has been Pod 138, brought to you by Mr. All In, aka the $1 Trillion Man, Dr. Evil 10%, aka the People's Champ, myself, Sir Neverlook, the Excellence of Execution, and Mrs. No Show, still Mrs. No Show. Pod 138, signing off. Peace.